Welcome to Dear Business Coach, the podcast. My name's Elizabeth. Find one thing to move your business forward today with conversations, spotlights, interviews, articles, and free resources. Listen and follow and subscribe on social media. Dear Business Coach pages and groups. Dear Business Coach podcast. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and don't forget Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, anywhere you listen to podcasts. All it takes sometimes is one little thing to move your business forward today. Okay, let's get. Ooh, okay. Excellent. Yeah, Alan Evitts, thank you so much for coming to the show today. Welcome to the Dear Business Coach podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Elizabeth?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And we're neighbors. It's not actually very often that I actually record with someone that's nearby. So we're both enjoying the spring storm of the wind and rain, but it's kind of pretty. Yeah. Well, you know what? I invited you here today for a couple of reasons, and I will get into that. But I actually want to jump right into a couple sentences that I have on your LinkedIn profile. And so that's how I know to get in touch with you. And so I know that on the screen here, we can provide as well the link to your profile on LinkedIn. And so Alan Evitts, which is Allen, Evitts, Evitts. I met you recently, and what I think I know of you, Alan, is a project manager and an educator from talking to you. But let's see what the introduction of your about section says. With over 2 decades of experience in project management, instruction, business analysis, and the Agile framework, I have consistently delivered high impact, strategic, and complex initiatives within the IT and telecommunications sectors. My most recent role as a project manager at Shentel involved leading and integrating multiple revenue generating projects, including the VA privacy law, Pega CRM implementation, and IPTV deployment. I also drove network operations enhancements within the delivery infrastructure, utilizing a diverse array of technologies and platforms such as Cisco, Nokia, Calix, Eero, Red Hat, Azure, and AWS. Amazon Web Services, is that right?
Yes, enough.
Mhm. No, enough. So, right. Very good. Okay, I'll stop.
That's the written version.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm a project manager. Have been a project manager for nearly 30 years in technology, and I've worked on a lot of different platforms, a lot of different technologies. But I'm basically a project manager, and I've taught project management for nearly 15 years. And I've worked as a business analyst, which in early days of project being a project professional, uh, we did a lot of work with multiple hats. We had to gather our own requirements. We had to deal with the business case and things that were traditionally business analysis work. I took on that mantle either officially or unofficially. I've worked around projects, and I've done it in technology. I've also worked in the construction field a bit, enough to understand the differences of that industry. But that's where I come out of that. I'm starting a new kind of chapter for myself, and working more towards the instructional part of what I've done, and developing classes, webinars, etc. Uh,
Hmm.
a lot. So that's where I'm going. This is kind of where I was, and I'm sort of moving forward from there.
Hey, listeners, don't forget to subscribe to email if you haven't already. Do this at dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. And if you are a new subscriber, look for the magazine coming up. You can get a free download as a new subscriber. That's dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, you are a superstar. Well, I have to say, when I think of what your day to day has looked like before and what it might look like now, I have a lot of questions as far as your progression, right, from being someone who, like you said, is taken on many hats, and you're incorporating the business analysis with your day to day in the field as a project manager, and then incorporating how to teach that. It sounds like with um, technology, you might have a number of different skill sets, right? Between literally dealing with the platforms that you're teaching on and for and with, and well, who are the different populations within an organization that you're bringing together, and that's something that I can't even I just begin to find the vocabulary to ask you the question of how to describe that. And um, I can draw like a diagram in my head of what it might look like, the way that your role might be, like a brainstorming map on paper, and the way the arms reach out to different departments in the organization. So, um, so tell me a little bit about the beginning of being of learning how to be a project manager.
Well, I come at project management very naturally. My early career was working actually as an instructor with young people, children and adolescents in some private school settings. Actually taught drama. I was a actor, director, producer in the early days. And really, when you're producing, directing theater, live theater, it's very close to the same skill set as a project manager because you have a concrete deliverable that you're trying to accomplish. You have a time frame and a deadline, and you never have any money. So you're always constrained. And I learned and used some techniques before I knew they were project management techniques.
Yeah.
But I also was around technology from an early age. My father put one of the first computers in a bank in South Georgia on the coast. They cleared 30 or 40 parking places and built him a building to put that first computer in. It
Whoa.
magnetic
Yeah.
tape and punch cards. That's how old it was. And the phone has more processing power, speed, memory, you name it, than that building had. So I
Hmm.
come at technology uh, pretty early, and I've been around the development of a lot of the technology that we're currently using. Uh,
Wow.
it's been fun. It's been an adventure. I studied computer science and worked on a PhD in mathematics and computer science at Emory University. Actually taught calculus there, so I've taught calculus and I've taught improvisational theater. So I won't meet a lot of us that can say that.
No,
It's
no, I was no and no. I think, I knew a little bit of that from talking to you before, but I wasn't expecting you to say that now. So I'm surprised again about, how that pulls together, because I still think that's fascinating. Yeah, you have uh, a, a natural inclination, and then you found a draw personally to theater. So, or it's it's kind of, do you grew up around technology, and then I'm imagining that you found a love for theater, and so that those two things don't go away, right? So when your day job develops, or when your career path develops, you have brought those um that style of learning, that way of mapping things in the world, that way of looking at things and understanding systems, or like a theater can be an organization, a building, a group, these things, how they work together. You're mapping out systems in your head, right? So you
it,
must have some kind of a brain for that.
well, it's the common thread is you're trying to get things done. David Allen had a great book of that title, which I have over here. And it's a wonderful concept. We're trying to get things done. I believe that project management is all about getting things done. We are shifting from project manager to project professional in some of the circles these days because of the agile framework and the titles are immaterial. If you're in
Mm,
charge of trying to get something done in a corporate setting or even not in a corporate setting, you're using the skills and the techniques of a project manager. You're trying to make sure that things come in on time, on budget, on scope. And scope just means what are you trying to do and how do you define it? I,
mm,
I did that years ago in theater. When I was directing and producing, you have to figure out the timeline of that production. How do you do it? You say, well, we've announced opening night is here. And then you go, okay, I have a week of dress rehearsals. I have a week of tech rehearsals. And you go back until you get to a date where you say, here's when we are going to have our auditions so that we can cast this thing and make it to that concrete deadline, which has already been announced. So you're using the same kind of skills of getting it done.
mm.
That
Yeah,
that
that's fascinating. I don't know if I would think of, see, I wouldn't think though of a theater director as somebody who's applying the getting things done. And now that I see you describing it and picturing you in that role, I immediately can think of a few people that I have worked with in the theater and film world who, yeah, they're not administrators, but yeah, they know how to put something together and make it happen. And what pieces are always going to be a variable and what pieces are a little bit easier to come by each time.
how do you maximize the problems that come up? You
Mm,
you you're always dealing with uh, one of my mantras is that in theater it's real people doing real things in real time.
mm,
And that real people doing real things in real time mantra works both on stage, because when you're on stage, you have to create the reality of that person in their situation and be able to communicate that to the audience. Whether you're doing Shakespeare or Gilbert and Sullivan or Neil Simon, it doesn't matter what the message is. It's the same kind of technique. And it also works in the preparation, in the process of bringing that. And you have to deal with the realities of something wasn't delivered on time. This set is not working. We have to go to a different way of telling the same piece of that story. And all of those
mm,
problem solving are things that I took forward into my professional life. And I saw them. I mean, I was already mature when I started dealing with the problems of corporate. And I was
mm.
naturally fit into it and was, you know, thrown to the proverbial wolves in the mobile wireless cellular technology. And I worked.
I used to work in a storefront in Tanglewood Mall, One Stop Cellular. I did that for a while, and I would enjoy when the reps would come in because our store we sold multiple carriers, and so we would have reps come in from Singular, and Intellos was ramping up right then, and that was a fun little experiment. That was interesting. A real tiny little and a little tiny vision into what the marketplace was doing at that time, working in this one little tiny storefront and watching, how they're making I'm seeing the retail push and then watching sort of in the news anything I can pick up behind how their infrastructure is building, who's competing over who with whom over what, and and it changes so quickly. And so I'm at and I have I have family in the telecom business or that retired from the telecom business. So when you say in the wireless world, I'm sure that means all kinds of things. And when you entered the marketplace, when you entered, go tell me.
Oh, well, when I entered, there were two different cellular providers in any one location.
Mm,
There was the CLEC, which was the competitor local exchange carrier, and there was the ILEC, which was the incumbent. Think
Mm.
of it as Ma Bell,
Uh-huh.
the phone company. They were able to sell cellular service first, and then they had a competitor which bid out and was able to do it. In the early days, all we were trying to do was sell phones, and so
Yeah.
and you were working with the sales channel you worked for was a reseller. We
Mhm.
had brick and mortar, which were company owned retail, and we had resellers, and then we had wholesalers. You were either a reseller or a wholesaler, depending on how y'all were working it. But
Mhm.
it, it's an interesting industry. I worked on it in the early days, and soon after I started working in it, we had number portability, which is your ability to take your phone number anywhere you want to. I did the first impact study of number portability for Bell.
Ooh.
And I did Y2K, which gets bad
Oh,
nowadays, but I actually connected all of IT. So every application within IT was connected for integration testing, end-to-end testing. So,
uh-huh. Okay.
so it was,
That's important, right? Because I'm gonna. This is the beginning of being able to, for example, get on the phone with somebody and test it on one end and in one location, and then test it on the other end at a different location.
well, it was in the future. We were testing Y.
Okay.
So we're in the late 90s and we're testing dates that don't exist yet.
Okay.
Systems had to be fooled to think that it was a different date that was post 2000.
Uh-huh. So, uh-huh. I'm following.
All of the systems had to be set up that way. And so it was the workflow was person walks into a store, buys a phone. They activate the phone. They make a phone call. Then it goes through a billing cycle. We can produce a bill. It'll print up at our bill finishing shop, which was in Sacramento, California at the time. And so the bill can be processed and sent, and when the monies come in, we can take the monies. All of this in a future setting.
Mm.
Uh, and we did 3 passes at that. It was an interesting project. It was I was hired and fired in a conversation. I
Wow.
had a boss, and I was working on the number portability, and it started getting hot. And meaning it was very important to the executives. And I was a contractor. I was not an employee. And so my boss calls me and he goes, I have good news and bad news. And he goes, I go, what? Well, what's he goes, well, I have to fire you. They want an employee to continue the work on number portability. Okay. What's the good news? Well, I have this project management position for this new project called Y2K. And if you want it, you can do that. It's integration testing. And
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and so Y2K team for almost 2 years working that effort. But that was fun. And then there was later on, I came back. I did serial contracts. I mean, I didn't work consistently throughout that period with the phone company, but I kept coming back, and I'd come back in a different department, which
Mm.
gave me a great breadth of the company. And I was brought back in the commissioning department, which is why I know sales channels so well. Uh,
Mhm.
and we launched a project in 2007. It was a little project, you probably heard of it. It was called the iPhone.
Right. Okay.
And,
Um.
hmm.
Hmm.
And that was originally launched by AT&T because, Bell South Cellular had combined with Singular, and then Singular was bought by AT&T. It's all the same group of people, just, mergers, acquisitions.
Yes.
But yeah, I worked on the iPhone for a while, back when we called it Project Bob.
Oh, really?
It wasn't announced until it was announced. We kept it under wraps. But it was interesting. It was an interesting project. It was nice being kind of ground floor on something like that has such a long uh, recognition factor. Is what.
Yeah, really. Is that going to be in your book?
Well, I did this much for the iPhone. I was working on the commissioning side, but
Hmm.
they basically we had to reinvent how we paid commissions because Apple wanted the phone to be activated by Apple. And normally, and you know this from working in the biz,
Hmm.
wanted to be able to hand the phone, activate the phone, and have the customer make a phone call or know it was working. They
Yes.
walked out of the the store, so that's
Yes.
an active phone. Well, the iPhone, they wanted us to sell the units and have them take it home, go, log into their computer, their Apple, and activate it through their systems.
Hmm.
The problem that we had in commissioning is linking that activation back to the event that they sold the phone and know who sold it to them
Right.
because they had to get paid commission.
Right.
And people were buying, you know, phones for their family at the time. At
Yeah.
first Christmas, mom and dad had new phones and so did the kids. And the kids may live in California, Maine, and Texas.
Right. Right.
So they send it to them and they activate not only in not in the store, but they're maybe in a different state and maybe across the country. So it was not an insignificant change to how we did.
Mm-hmm. I can see. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's that would involve all kinds of different department systems of technology. I mean, you would have to kind of build it from you'd have to design it yourself to make it work because it's brand new or
Yeah.
make it work. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we were doing in this that period of time, we did a lot of iterative development. What the agile framework is all about, not deciding the end product up front and then waterfall it so that you have the design a year before you actually build it. You build it in pieces and you
Mm,
deliver the value of what you're doing in increments. So it's an incremental kind of way of approaching a project. You're trying to get something done, but in some of the more conventional ways of looking at projects, it you try and really define that up front and then build it. And some things that you're doing that make sense. You're building a building, you got to know a lot about that building,
mhm.
or you even buy the property for it because
Yeah.
there's a lot of difference between building a family residence and building a, 5-story building, apartment building. I mean, and
Yeah.
a lot of times they can be built on the same piece of property, but they're built differently. You can't, it's hard to switch midstream from one to the other. Um,
Yeah.
Well, with software, you're building, I need the phone to give me a map. Okay, well then it needs a web service, okay, and it needs okay, maps. We get the maps over here. We'll load the maps. Then it needs some GUI to be able to interface with that. And what kind of questions are they going to ask us? Oh,
Mm,
we need a way to ask the questions. We need a way to answer them. We need a way to display it. And what other value added can we add? Well, let's put the restaurants out there and let's put
uh-huh.
landmarks out there on the map. And you can make it real fancy, but you don't have to deliver that all day one. You can deliver,
Yeah.
I want to see a map of Roanoke. Boom. There's a map of Roanoke. Oh, there's Floyd. It's right down there. I can see that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to tell me how to drive to Floyd right off the bat.
Hmm.
But then it iteratively can add that other functionality to it. And that's why Agile is very popular in software development and in technology in general, because the technology is changing quickly and the what we can do can change and what we need changes because we want to be reflective of market needs.
Yes.
Uh,
Well, yeah, remote. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
no, I was just going to say that's in contrast to a building where you know that it's going to take, a year, say, to build a building from the time that you decide to build
Mm-hmm.
the plan and the property. It'll take a year to actually physically build it because it's real people doing real things in real time. And the time it takes to build that and make it give you value. And what's the value of a building? I can live in it. I can work in it. Whatever that purpose of that structure is fulfilled. With software, it's different. You know, people are used to not getting all the bells and whistles at once, especially now. We have a very mature, computer savvy population. So
Mm-hmm.
we're not, I mean, there was a time, and I remember this time, that's how old I am, that you'd go into a bank and say you had a software that helped write checks, print checks.
Okay.
You had people in there who had been banking for 30 years, and this is the late 90s. So they're
Mm-hmm.
doing it since the 60s.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
They're used to typewriters
Yeah.
and not a word processing system because word processors were relatively new.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it was a culture shift that that existed. And people my age get laughed at because and called boomer all the time. Well, I am a so I don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's when uh, younger people call you a boomer that I laugh.
Get it right.
Yeah, right, exactly. You're gonna insult detail, but it's the we it's funny because I was at an event and they were trying to switch a TV over to a DVD to
Oh boy. Hmm.
and they said, well, let's get a young person to figure this out. And I just raised my hand and said,
Young person. Uh-huh.
because I've been doing that kind of low uh, uh, maintenance and helping with that kind of technical uh,
Hey, listeners, don't forget to subscribe to email if you haven't already. Do this at dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. And if you are a new subscriber, look for the magazine coming up. You can get a free download as a new subscriber. That's dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, you are a superstar.
problem solving.
Mm.
Well,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, no, well, I understand what, or I feel like I understand a little bit what it might feel like to switch from a typewriter to a word processor, because I think a lot about this relationship in my daily life of my physical relationship to the devices that I use.
mhm,
How I physically touch my phone. How easy is it to bypass the code? Is my Face ID actually going to work? Do I like that? Do I want to look, do I have to go, all these little tiny steps for every task? And also the size of the key, like on my laptop, I don't have a desktop anymore. I remember the my uh first time I told somebody that I was shopping for a new computer, and this was, let's see, maybe 10, maybe 10 years ago or something. And I was talking to my uncle, and he leads a team of people at the time. He was in an office setting. He's an executive. He manages a team of people. He deals with their technology changing all the time and having to buy new equipment. And I told my uncle, I'm looking for a new computer. And I was trying to tell him I wanted a desktop, and this vocabulary thing was happening between the two of us where he didn't quite understand what I meant. And I was like, "What do you mean you don't what I don't understand why he's not understanding this word desktop because I've always called the thing I use at home that has a tower and a full-size monitor my desktop. That's what I learned to use in school. And by the time I was ready to purchase my own brand new desktop as an adult, pay whatever I want for it, get exactly the thing I want, and what I want is readily available on the market for home use. He was calling it, he said, "Oh, you mean what you want is a workstation." He couldn't understand why I would, because he was thinking that I needed, he was picturing me at home using a laptop. He
Yeah.
thought, why would you need a workstation in your home? You need a laptop. I'm like, no, I don't want a laptop. I need a desktop. And we just went around this conversation for like 20 minutes before I understood why he didn't understood what I was saying. And and the same thing with somebody, may not the same thing, but somebody going from a typewriter to a word processor. This whole situation with trying to look at a screen versus physically feeling out these keys and watching the tool like a piano hit the piece of paper. My grandfather had a an electronic typewriter. That was a big deal in his office when I was a little girl, and I would play on his electric typewriter. Even that was like, whoa, this is a lot different than the one that has to hit like a keyboard. And I cannot imagine how difficult it would be if you're used to playing a piano, having to move to essentially what feels like a touch screen, right? You hit a key and the action is somewhere else and there's no physical reverberation to your hand.
It's the tactile the sensation of playing a electric piano or even I mean they have you can have a keyboard on a pad they roll up you can roll it out plug it in and you can play the notes but there's no sense of keys going down there's no physical movement associated with it. So there's a lot of different things technology is interesting but the story you're telling about the workstation, I love the work. I mean, I've been around long enough that I had an ex-wife who, when we first got together, she had a dumb terminal, is what's called a dumb terminal.
Okay, I've heard this.
Plug that in at home, and it was a big monitor, big monitor and a keyboard, and all it would do was connect to a mainframe somewhere
Yes.
on a slow line, on a modem,
Yes.
and she could interact with that mainframe as a dumb terminal, but there was no, and by dumb, it meant there was no processing unit, no memory to speak of, no
Mm-hmm.
guts that we have in our phones now uh,
Yeah.
in that terminal. And you were actually just a long distance from the computer you were working on, and it
Yeah.
see the screen and type because it was a green screen back then. But anyway, but
Yeah.
the conversation you had with about the workstation, it's what I believe project management's about, and being a project professional. We're all trying to get things done, and that's
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things that we have a difficulty with is the communications and communication problems because we use different words for the same thing. And that's
Yes.
when we all speak English and we're all, from around here, so to speak, and you
Right.
cultural differences in and different then you have the levels now it's the difference in generations is very pronounced uh,
Yeah.
and all of those things are part of you have to take into account. You have to problem solve the issues around that. I mean, uh, again, one of my mottos or something I'm writing about right now is that to be a project professional or a project manager, you really do three things. And that this works in whatever framework you're doing, or whether you're just talking about building a garden in the backyard. You organize, you communicate, and you lead. And as a project manager in a large group, it makes perfect sense. And when I say you organize, you communicate, and you lead, what I'm talking about is that every day when I get up and I start, and I log in or look at my computer, we don't reboot every,
Yeah.
but
We do that. Yeah.
and you have to think what's on my agenda. And
Yes.
things on your agenda that meetings that you have. But as a project manager trying to get things done, you look at it as, am I organizing more? Do I need to organize this? Is there chaos? Do I have to put things together? Do I have to, make sure people are in the right place at the right time? Do I have to call another meeting? Is it that what needs to be done? Or is it communicate? We've made decisions and we need to communicate them out. I need a status report to go out. I need to get answers, so I need to ask the questions. Or is it leadership primarily? Because a project professional trying to get something done, it's important as a leader of that project to lead it. And by leading it, I mean it's not always leading in front. Sometimes you're
Mm.
not in charge. I believe that a good leader is a servant leader, meaning that they are serving the needs of the team and trying to make sure that everything, all the impediments are out of their way so they can get their job done. I mean,
Yeah.
and and that can work whether you're managing a team of 30 or whether you are building a garden in the backyard and it's what hat am I wearing today? But it's all you. It be it can. And leadership comes in when it's a self project. When you wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror and you go, "Why am
Mhm.
I doing this? What am
Mhm.
I doing?" And you have to remember what you're trying to do, what are you trying to accomplish, and why it's important. Because it gives you, it frames it for yourself to move forward in what you're doing. And then, the communication and the organization are right there. Sometimes you have to communicate because you need to make sure that neighbor knows that you're going to move a fence, or
Mhm.
you need to communicate to, I think it's 811 here in Virginia, where
Mm. Mhm.
tell you where all the buried stuff is that you shouldn't cut into.
Right.
Every project is different. Every effort is unique, whether you're doing it by yourself or you have a team of people. But the idea is there are some consistencies that are exist no matter what you're doing.
Mm.
And part of that is when you're leading that kind of an effort, you organize, you communicate, you lead. And that's pretty much what you do. The details, and the devil is in the details, the details
Mhm.
are important. I mean, if you don't know how to use a hammer, don't try and build a shed.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if you don't have good technology people around you, don't try and do a technology project. That doesn't
Mm.
mean you can't lead one, you can't be a project manager for a technology project. It means you have to learn a little bit, but you don't have to learn how to code.
Mm.
I haven't coded
Mm. Mhm.
in a long time. And, back when I was in college, and this ages me, but it also shows you how short a time it was.
Mhm.
I was in college. I graduated in 1981.
Okay.
The first PC did not come out until 1982.
Okay.
So we were still typing our papers I had an electric typewriter, but
Mhm.
still typing our papers,
Mm. Mhm.
doing word processing in any real way. Um, it and it was a different, you know, type of technology back then. I learned how to code on a very old computer doing punch cards, and it was COBOL and Fortran and BASIC were the
Uh-huh.
and they're, you know, except for COBOL, which they still want to bring people out that can do that because that's the main language for a lot of mainframes still.
Okay.
Uh, you know,
Hmm.
it changed. You know, the languages have advanced and they're much more. There's a whole lot more that can be done. Uh, but when it comes right down to it, we get lost in the complexities. I mean, it's easy to make some.
Yeah.
It's real easy to look at a backyard project and be overwhelmed by what you don't know, what you do know that you don't want to do, maybe, and just the sheer effort that has to be put into it. It can be over.
Mhm.
And one of the goals of managing a project is to try and, well, it's to make it successful. And to make it successful, you have to address both the complexities and see the ease. Some things are not hard. We just have to do. We just have to. I mean, it's not hard, and it's finding ways to do things more efficiently so that you can be successful and finding the small victories along the way. And you have to embrace that process. You know, most people want to get to the finish line and they
Yeah.
want the prize.
Yeah.
I have found through the years that you have to embrace the process. You have to find the small victories along the way. And if you're trying to do something, you really do have to enjoy getting up in the morning and doing the work. Because if you're not enjoying that, it will get miserable. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow.
Hmm.
And as we used to say, I did some time in the restaurant business, and those days can be very, very hard on you, but you had Novocaine at the end.
Right.
And it was,
Yeah.
so it was like, you know, it was a tough day, but I made money. And
Yeah.
that is, can work to a certain degree for certain periods of time.
Mm.
Money isn't everything. And it is, I found more success in enjoying what I do on a daily basis than doing things because they had to be done and I was being told to do them, and
Mm.
wasn't a whole lot of fulfillment in that. Those times and those pieces are not what I want to do right now, which is why I'm real happy with where I'm sitting right now, because I have a little more control over uh, what I get up in the morning and do. I can get up in the morning at 10 o'clock. We can have a conversation.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what a compliment too. Yeah, if this is something that's fun, that's why I'm here too. I'm like, you know what, this is really awesome. You can play with. I think about the reward schedule around what you do in your daily life, and having the space and the time to think about that. Like, what is it when this task is done that was fun, and what was that was rewarding, and you're not, you're maybe it's something that I'm attracting right now, but you're the second person recently who has used those words, to be wary of something that's not really truly rewarding. Your comment there about money's not everything is uh echoing as far as put that idea together with what is your reward coming from, and being able to get that out of your work in the process, and as through the process is so important, and to be able to surround yourself with other people who see that, who feel that, who are able to experience that with you at work is pretty amazing. And so it sounds like you are the right type of person to go into teaching if you actually have the perspective that as a leader, this is something that you can enjoy. If project management is something that you are find yourself in right now or aspire to be, but especially if you're in the throes of it and becoming better.
And it doesn't, I'm in a I'm in a very lucky place right now because I have control over it to a certain degree or a larger degree. And part of it is I'm taking control over it because it's, some of it's choice and some of it's what's happening around. But the thing is, even if you're not in a situation where you have a lot of control, there are techniques of getting things done that aren't particularly pleasant. But
Mhm.
and I use these. There's things I don't like to do. I mean,
Sure.
there's always things that you don't like to do. And I use a technique called time boxing, which is a tried and true technique. It's used in agile framework a lot, talked about time boxing. It's like it's not boxing, it's putting looking at a frame of time and putting work in that box and trying to do it within that framework. I mean, we do time boxing. I mean, this interview has a certain limit that we're trying to do
Hmm.
and will be delivered. There's two boxes. One is how much time we're taking to record it, and one is how much you're going to deliver at the end. And those
Hmm.
don't have to be the same because we can edit if I ramble on. But other things can be time boxed like that are unpleasant. This is pleasant.
Yes.
Like, okay, I have got to put all my month-end bookkeeping together. Not my favorite task.
Hmm.
So I'm going to block out 10 minutes on Friday to do that. And I'm going to put it on my calendar at
Okay.
10 minutes. And I'm going to do it for 10 minutes. Now, if I finish it, great. If I don't finish it, I'm done.
Okay.
I'm just going to work at it for 10 minutes. It's like cleaning the great house cleaning. If you
Mm.
into your house cleaning, I have to clean the entire house. You'll spend 3 minutes complaining to yourself that you have to do it, and then 2 minutes figuring out how it can be done tomorrow.
Right. Yes, how to get out of it.
Here's how the time boxing can help. You can go, okay, I'm going to spend 20 minutes and I'm going to work on the kitchen.
Okay, yeah.
20 minutes, I'm off the hook. I've done my commitment to myself. I've done my deed, and I don't have to feel guilty about not, having cleaned everything and doing the baseboards and scrubbing the grout. Uh, I'm going to spend, but I am going to get work towards that goal because the goal is important, and it's finding techniques to be able to kind of fool yourself into doing it, if you will, without driving yourself nuts and moving towards the goal. And what this does, psychologically, what happens a lot of times is when you say, I'm going to work for 10 minutes on something, I usually don't say anything less than 10 minutes, is that when you start on it and you get to and I use a timer, I use a egg timer,
Okay.
or my phone. And when it goes off and I go, okay, my time's up, sometimes I'm like, on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm almost done. I'm in the,
Mm,
I'll finish it.
mm.
And you finish something, or because you're in the rhythm, and
Yeah.
the hard part is starting something. It's not that it's that difficult. It's just that in your brain, it feels more difficult than it really is. And
Yeah, right. Yeah, get you've built that stop. You've built the relief at the end. That's amazing. Right up front, you already are relieved.
you've made a deal with yourself. You have to work hard, but only for 10 minutes, and,
It sounds so funny.
and then you can renegotiate at the end of 10 minutes. And oh, it's like I have a new planter on my deck, and I need to fill it with dirt, but I accidentally made it bigger than I really wanted to, and I don't want to go get 10 bags of soil to fill it up.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah, no.
my personal deal is I have two buckets which I can carry easily, and I have some dirt in the back that needs to be dealt with, and so I'm two buckets at a time. If
Mm,
I have a break, I need to go check something. I'll go do two buckets. And if I do two buckets, I've done two buckets, and
mm,
then I don't. It alleviates some of the anxiety and pressure we put on ourselves, especially when you work by yourself, uh,
mhm.
to get everything done. Because
Right.
there a lot of times there's not anyone else that can do what you do. And
Mhm.
as somebody who has a business, and I know you do too, that's important. But where it fits in with project management and project professionals is you can be in a room full of people. As a project manager, a lot of times you're the only one who does what you do.
Yeah.
You may have a team of 30 people, but when it comes down to some of the unique skill sets that you bring to it, there's no one else. You can't just say, get that project plan done, write that status report. I mean, those are sort of what you do.
Right.
And so, and some of that can be difficult, time consuming. Um, and a lot of people say, well, change the report to make it fun. Well, you don't always
Can't,
do that.
can't always do
You're
that.
kind of stuck with a format. One of the word pictures I give project managers of what we do for a living, especially when you're a project manager in a corporate setting, is
Mm.
you're fighting a two-headed dragon.
Mhm.
One head is getting things done on time, on budget, on scope, the triple constraint of great project management. You're trying to get things done. The other head is governance,
Mhm.
the rules. It's what
Mm,
PMO wants you to
mm,
do, project management office wants you to do. It's the paperwork that's required to do your job that really may or may not affect getting it done.
mhm, mhm.
But you got to do it because
Right.
you can't ignore one head of the dragon or it will bite you. It- it- and I have known project managers who had projects that were fully compliant by all governance standards. But when they, plugged in the proverbial system and said, turn it on, it didn't work.
Yeah, that's not where you want to be.
So you can't ignore get it done, make it work, but you can't ignore the governance side either. And I've done that. I mean, I years ago, I
Mm,
had a report that was asked for me to do on a weekly basis. You need to do this report.
mm.
And I was like, and I couldn't see any reason to do it. And I did it a few times. And I said, okay, here's the deal to myself. I'm not going to do this report. And I'm going to see how long it is until they ask me for that report to see how valuable that piece of data is. And it was 6 months
Oh, I was not expecting that.
before they said, have you done this report? And I'm like,
Mm.
and we had a conversation about, but and but you can get into real trouble if you don't comply with the governance of a corporation that is looking for things. So,
Yeah.
and I call it a two-headed dragon because they're not the same thing. They're
Mm,
not the same thing. Now,
mm-mm.
there's some crossover. There's a Venn diagram there, but
Yeah.
depending on what you're doing and the corporate structure you're in and the type of project, all the details, um, they are there. They're not always the same. They're not, and you just have to be aware of them.
Yeah. Well, and that's part, I think probably part of the um skill set too is keeping your wits about you and being awareness is not something to take for granted. Self-awareness is a new kind of what kind of awareness? Well, yeah, if you can see
Yeah.
your thought process and your feet on the ground at the at the same time, as the project manager, you probably have to think about that every day too, as far as w- uh how are you doing? How are you maintaining the goal? How are you following your own goal structure and keeping the excitement of, oh, this is working. Let's keep the momentum going to get it done.
Well,
um,
yeah, it really is. I mean, one of the things that I was talking to somebody yesterday about is that you got to be planners tend to plan, and project managers tend to be planners.
mm,
You tend to, if you plan too much, you can't get wrapped up in planning and not get anything done. It's like over organizing something.
yeah.
And can you over organize something? Yes, yes, you you can overthink something. I've been there, done that. And I work real hard at seeing if the easiest solution will work rather than trying to come up with, you know, the perfect solution.
You know, I was watching, and that's time. I've actually kept you way, way, way over time, and so we actually have to we have to go. I'm so sorry, I didn't realize what time it was. But you know, I'm watching right now a television show about a team who builds swimming pools.
Mhm.
And this is really fascinating. I watched several episodes last night. And the the one episode, the crew didn't clean their concrete sprayer from one day to the next, and the concrete sprayer started to stop and clog up. And at the end of the episode, the gentleman who owned the business, right, it's his company, and he's famous for making these awesome swimming pools and all around the country. And he looked at the camera and he said, we didn't clean the machine yesterday. And so I thought, well, hopefully, and my partner at home, he said, well, that was either very gracious of him to say that, unless it was somebody else, unless it was his job, and he's talking about how it was everybody's responsibility.
Well, it's as a project manager, here's my take on that issue. I've always had this sense of ownership of all projects that I worked on. And when something would go wrong with a project, I'd have if you're in a team meeting and people are complaining about something, I would go, okay, wait a minute. I'm the project manager. I'm responsible for everything. You have 15 seconds to complain vehemently about it. Go.
Mm,
And after 15 seconds, usually it would make them laugh, and
mm,
it'd be like, you know, it, rear view mirror. Get out of
mm,
the rear view mirror, keep your eyes on the road.
mm,
What are the path forward? What's our next best steps? What do we need to do moving forward? Yes, we need to correct some things, but those are usually obvious, and we need to put those into writing and correct them. But don't get wrapped up with the mistake and relive it. It
mm,
doesn't get you moving forward. How, once I realized that you made a mistake, it's like, oh, I'm going in the wrong direction. Well, I could keep driving in the wrong direction and think about how I got here, or I could turn around and find the right direction.
mm, mm,
And while I'm going to get back on my path, I can do some brainstorming about how not to have it happen again. But don't waste time. Don't waste good time after bad time.
mm, mm.
Don't, and but acknowledging that you made a mistake, it's a brilliant thing, whether it was his fault or not. His
Right, right,
response,
right.
you know.
Yeah, I
Um,
thought that was good. I thought that it was good either way. The effect was there, and I believed him either
yeah,
way. Yeah. Well, Alan, I thank you so much for coming to the show today, and this has been fantastic. I have your LinkedIn page, so just to remind myself that I can find you at LinkedIn / Alan Evitts, ALLENEVITTS. And so I'm going to be looking out for some new possibly some ways that I can find your courses and possibly some things that you have possibly coming out that might be published in the near future.
Got a book coming out and trying to finish it up, and it's on the idea of the organization, communication, leadership kind of triad. I'm also, if you've spelled my name twice, thank you. If
Yes.
spell my name. If you find my name, Alan Evitts, if you Google Alan Evitts, you find me. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
it's a unique name, and you'll find me in various different places. Typically, I do business through LinkedIn or a few other sites out there. But if you reach out and say that you saw me here,
Mhm.
I will definitely take your call and call you back and or text you back or whatever. But I appreciate it, Elizabeth. This has been fun.
Yeah, I love it, and you know what? We will do this again. So, uh,
Anytime, anytime.
thank you so much. I hope you have a fantastic week, and we'll talk next time.
Thanks. Take
Thanks.
care.
You too. And you've been listening to the Dear Business Coach podcast. My name's Elizabeth Walker, producer and host. Don't forget to subscribe to email. Thank you so much for being here, and find one thing today to move your business forward. Contact me at dearbusinesscoachpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, you are a superstar.